you got to be able to deliver it in a way that you don't freak them out, or you got to not freak out when you see it. And number two, you got to be able to handle the fallout from when you tell them whatever it is, because sometimes it's not a pretty picture.
No, it's not. And you can't be, like Ghost. Ooh, Molly, you in trouble.
Yeah, you got to really you got to pull out any kind of exclamations of this is bad, or whatever, because it may not be bad for them. Maybe that's what they want. It just, to you it seems bad, but maybe they want to have 5 girlfriends or something. You know what I mean? And I'm just saying, like, I had to learn that one. I learned that one over, I cut my teeth in psychic fairs, and I learned I had a lot of repeat customers, and I learned that there's some things you got to just really lay out there, very bare bones, no pun intended. You got to lay it out there, let them, I lay it down, they pick it up if they choose, and that's how it goes.
Yeah, and for new people, new readers, people that aren't seasoned, that haven't done a lot of readings like we have or had the years of experience, parties, psychic fairs, if you are feeling comfortable enough to read for other people without the use of books or aids, other than your deck or your bone set, I do recommend doing that.
Yeah, I'd say 100% just go out there and do it, because it's almost like riding a bike. I mean, they take the training wheels off, and you're either going to fall or you're going to keep going. You're going to keep going. So you might as well just get out there and do it. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to get it wrong, and next time you'll get it right. You just got to believe in yourself. And the other thing too, I think, is that in some people's case, if they are spiritually connected enough, they're going to get it right no matter what. I mean, it's almost like if you're spiritually connected, you're going to get it. And you know what I mean? You're going to channel what's got to say. It's going to come out.
Right. And you do have to be spiritually connected, which means you have to have a good connection with your own ancestors, with your own guides,
right.
And you have to work with them and communicate with them every single day.
That's true.
It's like a family member, a lot of them are. And if you close yourself off to that, you're not going to get the messages other than, basically what the cards mean or what a piece means.
Yeah.
The bigger picture comes from your ancestors, guides, and your spirits saying, hey, here's this pattern of these different pieces, all surrounding this particular issue. And they will start giving you information that just looking at pieces, you're not going to know, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. This is the person.
Yeah, that's very true. That's become the case in a lot of, I've found a lot of pregnancies and held a lot of babies, like, held 5 or 6 little kids after. As a matter of fact, the other day I saw one that, I read her mom, and I told her, I read the mom, and I told her that she was pregnant. She's like, no, am I pregnant? And I said, well, it looks like you probably are. And she's like, are you sure? And I'm like, well, that's what I'm getting here, because the way things are laying here looks like one way, but I'm hearing something else. And sure enough, the other day I saw this little 3-year-old girl who actually really liked me.
Well, she probably heard you during the reading.
Yeah, she actually smiled at me and seemed to remember me, which was kind of it was almost alarming, but it was really sweet. I've had that happen I don't know how many times, So I know it's spiritual, and I know it's a spirit-driven thing, because I'm pretty sure that if I just looked at the pieces, I wouldn't see that. I've found a lot of darker things too. I found causes for single car accidents. I've been sought out for things like that. Been sought out for miscarriages, things like that, problem pregnancies, health pregnancies. One of the first readings I ever did on that trip, when I did those first 11, I found out that a family member had type 2 diabetes and was gradually headed towards diabetic neuropathy, where he couldn't walk. And that was when I went, okay, what's going on here? And that's when the guy pulled me aside and said, you better keep doing this. So yeah, it's definitely, there's more to it. You gotta have a tight connection with those ancestors. I can't stress that enough. Ancestor altar in the house, even if you weren't tight with those ancestors, you still got to give credit, because like I learned, I took an ancestral medicine course here, and I'm not even finished with it yet. The 80, what is it? Let's see, 1,000 years, was it 1,000 years is 80 generations. So think about that for a second.
And you're not going to like every single one of them.
You're calling in those ancestors. You're calling in a lot of people. We're talking about more than a football stadium's worth of people that helped you get where you are to sit right here and for us to have this conversation. So it's a lot of people.
And it's one of those things that, whether you like an ancestor or not, whether it's a parent, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a great-grandparent or a grandparent that you had bad issues with while they were alive, you still have to help elevate that, person's energy.
Exactly. That's one of the things that go ahead.
I said you also should put them to work.
Exactly, and also help them along. That's one of the things that we learned in the ancestral medicine classes, was about the troubled dead, the ghosts, and the ones who are what they call the well ones, who are okay. The ones who have repaired. And in the ancestral lineage, ancestral medicine, you work with a lineage of people. Like all the people on your mom's side, or all the people on your dad's side, or whatever. And the thing is I've had people come to me and say, "Hey, I don't want to put my dad in because." Me and him, I have my reasons, and I said, well, okay, we can do it that way, but when I read this, I'm still going to be talking about your dad, and then the other thing too is I also will put in put people's step parents in. That's another thing I make a point to ask, at every reading I say, are these your parents, or what are your step parents, and when did they become your step parents? How old were you? Because I believe that I used to believe between 0 and 2, then I believe between 0 and 4, now I believe between 0 and 6 years old. I think that's when the transition, if somebody comes in at that point, they're going to leave an imprint, but you still cannot deny that blood relative influence.
You can't. And
no.
As our guides, the ones that you had issues with can be protectors. They can stand at your door. They can protect your property. They can give you strength that you may need during certain times. All these things we have to take and look at and consider what their traits were. Because we know that when we pass, into spirit, we see every single thing that we've ever done in life. The good, the bad, the ugly, makes no bit of difference. And we still, even in spirit, have that need to make up for all of our wrongdoings.
Yeah, and sometimes, sometimes I'll have people come to me and they want a reading and they get a reading and I'll touch upon a subject and they'll say, well, that's like been a problem for me my whole life. And I'll say, well, look at the proximity and this line. That's another thing I work with I will admit that I work with ley lines in the reading itself. I look for lines. I look for, not just patterns, but lines. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, well, look along this line, and I'll lay the quill, the porcupine quill or whatever I'm using. I usually use a porcupine quill. Lay it down, and I'll show them how it's all connected. It goes right back to this ancestor or this, great, 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 great ancestor that's on mom's side of the family. That's where your spiritual, for whatever word, let's say disconnection comes from that side of the family. And then they'll say, oh yeah, my mom could, she was a Mormon and then she was a Christian and she never found peace. And I have a hard time finding peace or finding a path. And I'll say, well, this is where it comes from. So sometimes those ancestors help help. They point things out to help the client understand where a troublesome issue in their life is, and it makes it very clear for them. All of a sudden, it's like an aha moment, like an epiphany, where they go, "Oh, well, wow, I'd never realized it was like, and I'm like, it's in your blood. It's part of who you are."
And so that's why working with your ancestors is so important.
Yeah. So make peace with not only with you, because you're who you are. Love who you are. Sometimes I'll ask people, what do you love about your life? What do you love and care for? And they'll say, some people will say all kinds of crazy things. Chocolate. I love to go hiking, and I'll get every answer there is. And sometimes they'll say, oh, I love to get down to the inner workings of things. And I'll say, well, that's because this ancestor here is over here near the mechanics of what makes things work in situations. That's what drives them. And they understand what drives things fast. The rabbit bone is laying there. The rabbit says, spring into action, understand, look at it quickly, things like that.
Yeah, and things multiplying, and that's
yeah, true.
If it lands next to the sex piece, you're in trouble.
It's funny to bring that up because in one of the recent readings I did, the rabbit came in with the meaning of the more you ignore this problem, the more it multiplies into other problems of a similar nature. That was one of the things, and all I have is a little tiny rabbit leg bone, and I don't even know how it's survived, to tell you the truth. I don't know how it's made it as long as it has. It's tiny, and a lot of my pieces are very small, which is where the 180 piece comes in.
Yeah, I have a lot of my pieces are small, and I kind of prefer small pieces because it lends the ability for them to really squeeze into tight places.
Exactly.
And you have to really, like I also use a porcupine quill. You have to really sometimes pick pieces up with it and look underneath to see, what the underlying issue is as you're going down, peeling the layers of the onion.
Yeah, I call it play pick apart, because usually what happens is one portion of the reading, you'll see pictures of my stuff online, and sometimes it's really, they're spread out pretty nice, and it's pretty easy. But there's always one section where you got to play pick apart, and you got to go in there and find out exactly what's going on, and you got to get down in the crevices of what's happening, And the other thing I found was it's real different if you use, I don't know what you use to read on, but sometimes I'll use a cosmogram, the Congo cosmogram, which is the circle with the equilateral cross. And sometimes I'll just use a mat. And it's really interesting. My mat, Michelle Jackson made my mat. I met her back in 2013, I believe, and I traded her a bottle of what I then called Ancestor Healing Oil, which I've renamed since for obvious reasons. And I gave her the Ancestral, and she gave me the mat and told me, get to work. And I did.
Well, I started off with Ancestral Healing's divination set. And that came with the cosmogram mat that Robert Lucas provides. Right. And I had trouble because being as linear as I am, having all of that in front of me, is what stumped me. Having the quadrants, the colors, where I'm so used to past, present, future being left, middle, right, things moving out farther being the distance, things above you or below you. And then the colors, for me, it was too much to look at all at once, especially trying to learn. So I just use, sheepskin.
I have two of Robert's sets, mainly because I just wound up with two of them. I've used it a number of times, and it is definitely a lot to take on. I primarily use Michelle's, mat that she made, and I have another mat that I made. But a lot of times, what I'll do is I'll take a powder or a sand, and I'll draw a cross on it, so it has that cross section in there. But you're right, the Ancestor Healing set is very heavy, and it's interesting because when you used it, did you use your pieces on his set? Or did you use his pieces?
I used his pieces. but now his pieces have morphed into like 120 pieces.
Exactly.
They're all included in my main set.
Right.